Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Gatlin, and I'm the board president here. It is so good to be together this morning. I have a kind of silly request, so bear with me. I want everyone to close their eyes for a moment. Think about where you were and what you were feeling 3 years ago today. March 12th, 3 years ago today, was the day after the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 to be a pandemic. The day before our government declared a national emergency and schools and businesses around the country shut down. For many of us, this was the weekend 3 years ago where we realized everything was shifting and it would be a while before we saw friends and family again. Now open your eyes and take a deep breath and look around you. We are here together in this sacred space, surrounded by people who love us and cherish this community. Aren't we lucky? I was asked to talk for a few minutes this morning about community and about pledging our financial support to keep our church vibrant. There is a pledge box at the back left entrance of the sanctuary right inside the doors. And I could talk all day about budgets and restricted endowments. It's kind of my thing. But what it really comes down to is what we want our church to be and how we want our vision of ministry to unfold. We have talked for years in this church about drawing the circle wider, about being a welcoming and affirming place for people who share our values, regardless of whether they identify themselves as UU. And I think this year, we're really starting to see that vision come to life. In looking around this room today, I know that I've seen most of you here at church, and not just on Sundays, participating in programming that is new and vibrant. I want to ask you today to reflect on how that feels. When you gather here with people who share your values and are working toward a common goal, whether it is eradicating hunger or addressing systemic racism, or simply cooking a meal or playing a board game together, how does it feel to know that you are connected and valued and seen? That is what our vision of ministry looks like in action. That is what your pledges support. They allow us to plan more community programming, more opportunities to nourish our congregation and to connect with each other and with new people. When I come to church, when I get to interact with the people around me in meaningful ways, I am creating the kind of world that I think we all deserve to live in. I hope you get the opportunity to share that feeling. Come to our community celebration at Fellowship Hour today after service. Celebrate the fact that you are here. Celebrate our members who have been with this church since the 1980s and earlier. And if you can pledge your financial support, please do. It really does make a difference.
Like our beautiful Grand Universalist Church on Nahant Street in Lynn that burned to the ground in January of 1976, the San Jose Unitarian Universalists lost their building in a 1995 fire. And this is from a sermon given by Rebecca Parker when they regathered. Like the San Jose congregation, we can discover within our own experience the resources that will lead us from devastation to life. These resources are revealed in the stories of our lives and preserved in the wisdom of our religious traditions. The San Jose Church laid a cornerstone that says service. And down the street, the Muslim Center laid a cornerstone that says, God is one. And across town, the synagogue laid a cornerstone that says, love your neighbor as yourself. Next door, the Baptists have laid a cornerstone that says, religious freedom. And the Methodists, one that says, do all the good you can. And the Catholics, one that says, if you want peace, work for justice. The Buddhists have laid a cornerstone that says, practice compassion And farther out in the valley, the Native Americans have assembled stones on which it is written, "Everything begins in beauty. We are all children of one life." These are the cornerstones of hope. Our task is to raise these cornerstones from the rubble of our failures and in partnership with people down the block and around the world to build and rebuild the foundations. Let us shelter our dream that life can survive in blessing, and to that hope, let us rededicate our resources and our lives. And to add to that, those cornerstone images laid out by Rebecca Parker, I just want to call your attention to this sculpture, Prayer for Peace, by Lydia Breed, an artist of this congregation who was also on the building committee that, as are several others this morning, that got this building, it called it into being by their work and dedication. It is guarded right now behind a fan and an air filter because it is fragile and because moving it, we cannot move it. It needs to be moved by professionals. This was crafted out of 3 of the pews that lasted from the congregations that merged to become the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn. Another monument to hope. Blessed be.
Now is the time, hope finds a way. Now is the time for change. Lift up your voice, you will be heard. Now is the time for change.
One of the smaller projects that I undertook this past month of returned sabbatical time was to unsubscribe my email address from dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds, of companies, organizations, groups, cultural centers, political campaigns, and junk mail that have my inbox at currently 170,000 unread messages. So for those of you who really like to keep that zero inbox, I hope I didn't just cause you to have an anxiety attack. I just have never worried about getting mine to zero. I never could. What I do is I highlight them and I batch delete them now and then, but I don't dare delete too many because my anxiety is that I'll get rid of some emails that were important, from like 6 years ago, but I might need them. So, you learn a lot about yourself when you unsubscribe. Here I'm going through it and I'm like, I visited Santa Fe, New Mexico once. It was the weekend of Obama's inauguration, and why am I still getting emails from that hotel? Or, the Hingham Library on the South Shore does fantastic programs, but I haven't lived near Hingham for 10 years. So talk about overdue. So I was clicking through this endless list of emails and kind of multitasking, doing something else on the side, probably playing Wordle, I don't know. And I was skimming content to see if I still wanted to get the communications from wherever, when I came across one that was very beautifully designed. It had really pretty colors, and it had nice programs that looked really good. I'm looking and I'm like, meditation, environmentally conscious related activities, something about cooking together, that's totally cool. Mention of children, just had a really good vibe to it. Yeah, some of you are already guessing where this goes. And I'm like, this is a really nice group. I wonder if this is one that's near me. I should go to their things. And then I kind of looked closer, and it was our weekly update. And that is a true story. I am not making that up. It didn't have any pictures in it that time. It didn't have my picture in it specifically, or worship. So I really, honestly had the opportunity to really just see that and go, looks good. I'm going to stay subscribed. And Mary Galtieri, who designs that weekly update, is right here. And I told the staff that story at our staff meeting. When you're deeply involved in any group or any community, it gets harder over time to see it through the eyes of someone who isn't integrated into it, not an insider. So I found it to be very heartening that my uncareful attention to our outward-facing materials felt so inviting. And also that it really kind of viscerally and through its design communicated what the church is: a center for gathering, going deeper, caring, connecting people to each other and to their ethical imperatives. There was nothing mysterious about it. There was nothing that suggested an intimidating process to be included or get involved. No secret handshakes. It felt truly inviting. And it also felt relevant. It spoke to the time that we are in right now as a species and as a local community. And that was really inspiring. I heard a story recently from a woman who survived a tragic accident that took the lives of her parents and other members of her extended family. They were all in a car together, heading out on a family vacation, when a tree fell squarely on top of the car. Bad timing, just crushing all of them. This woman who told the story lost the use of her arms and legs. It was a serious spinal cord injury. She is a paraplegic. And she talked about how for the first 2 full years after the accident, she was hospitalized. Her whole identity was to be a patient. She had to cope with the unimaginable changes to her life, all the loss and the grief, the end of so much of what she understood to be herself, and all the relearning she had to do in rebuilding a completely different relationship with her own body. After those first years, she realized she was going to survive, and she was stable enough to think about something other than how to just get through the day. And she said, I started to consider what else my life would need to have in it. She had focused so much on what her life could no longer have in it. She needed to create or nurture something more than just survival, more than just trying to cope with her new body. And she realized, as she said, I realized I had to find meaning. As I said, I've been reviewing hundreds of organizations, companies, institutions, campaigns, projects, initiatives, whose acquaintance I have been making as I sojourn through the world and whose email lists I have managed to get on. They're all worthy. They have very cool missions. They all address something meaningful: healthy democracy, stewardship of the earth, the spiritual uplift of the arts, protection of children or animals, ending hunger and food insecurity, advocacy for immigrants crossing the desert, all good works. But the project of meaning-making, the wider mission of attending to the spiritual and existential dimension of the human struggle from birth to death, that has always been the explicit charge of the religious community. And I don't know if this woman joined any kind of religious community in her quest for meaning-making. She didn't discuss that. But I just wanted to say, because we're all thinking about her, that she did go on to live a full life. She got married, she had children. She says she's very happy, unbelievably to her past self. She's happy now because she went deeply into the project of making meaning. I hope she didn't have to do it alone. There is nothing new about what we do in church as a church. That's why it can so easily look stale and irrelevant. It can get stale and irrelevant if the church does not remain engaged with the here and now, however demanding that might be. And you know it is demanding. What the church does and exists for is ancient. It is connected to birth, death, and mystery. Rituals that in many cases haven't really changed much at all for centuries and maybe even thousands of years. The church, like all those other organizations whose mission I find to be totally worthwhile and worthy, the church plans projects, sure, but its foundational project doesn't have a timeline or even tangible outcomes because the projects are in here, the interior meaning, the interior selves. It aims, in the words of a very old prayer, to prepare us all for what God is preparing for us. And this is the prayer. It's not that old, actually. Oh Lord, prepare us for what thou art preparing for us. Interesting to unpack that a little bit, although we could take those words of that prayer as a promise of an afterlife reward for what thou art preparing for us. That isn't how our Unitarian Universalist tradition interprets this humorous take on the uncontrollability of our existence. For what thou art preparing for us, we don't know. We live in this vast mystery, and the energies are going, and our lives are going, and it's all happening, and we don't control it. It isn't an afterlife, therefore, that we're orienting our spirits and souls for as a community. It is this life, and the unknowability of what's going to happen moment to moment. One day you're traveling the road to behold a beautiful new place. The next, the tree falls on the car and wipes away all that we thought would happen next. Our mission as a church encompasses and is the foundation beneath all of the other missions. It is to encourage deep living, meaning making, and meaning makers. It is to equip all those whose souls have inclined them to join together in community with some of the resources taught and practiced by many, many generations for staying present, staying human, and staying generous when fear and change causes many others to retreat into private caves of clannish self-interest. When fear and ignorance causes many others to practice barbaric mentality and ideologies. The mission of the church is to be a place and a people who vow to stay awake and alive to wonder, to the sacred in all of us, and to affirm possibility even through every circumstance. It is to keep alive and to nurture the kind of spirit that would cause an artist to see this out of the burnt remnants of a church, and to build it and to create it. We who are the church in this generation, its people, its singers, its teachers, its ushers, its leaders, its dreamers, its elders, its artists, children, its prophets and servants, its prayers and its planters, give of ourselves our actual lives. The church asks this of us. In an environment, in a social environment that tempts us always to think of ourselves as the customer, the one who must be satisfied, the church holds before us a deeper identity, to know ourselves not as consumers, but as recipients of a holy grace and a generosity that we are asked to respond to with our lives by giving it back and giving it back again. That is our offering. And the church, in all its generations, thank you for yours.